All right, welcome back to another episode of Aftershocks TV right here on the CMS network. And on today's episode, I'd like to welcome to the show a guy who, in my opinion, is one of the best metal vocalists out there today. You know him as the new vocalist for the Mighty Metal Church, and of course, he's also the frontman for Ross the Boss. I'd like to welcome to the show, Mr. Marc Lopes. Marc, thanks for coming on, man. How are you?
Great, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Marc. Well, yeah, let's get right into it, bud. I mean, Legacy of Blood, Fire, and Steel, latest release by Ross the Boss, exclusively on vinyl. It comes out April 28th on AFMM Records. 15th anniversary, sort of a best of release record here that contains 3 songs from all 4 albums from Ross the Boss, right up until the stellar Born on Fire from 2020. So, Marc, I mean, I'm not sure if you had anything to do with the decision of the release coming out, but I know, and we'll talk about this here in a bit, but unfortunately, I know the pandemic, it really derailed all that momentum from Born on Fire that was going on a few weeks. Yeah, man. I mean, because that hit, I mean, pretty much right after the album came out. So, of course, you guys never got to tour for it, but now you're getting ready to tour here at the end of April in Europe. So, I mean, I guess for the fans, can we assume that we're going to, in Europe right now, are they going to see, I guess you'd say here, these tracks that are on the record, are they going to be sort of like the set list for the tour? I mean, what can you tell us about that?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
They're they're focusing on this whole 35th anniversary of the Kings of Metal. I mean, I don't have much say in that. I mean, as much as I love that album, I would have rather play my own stuff, but it is what it is. I mean, will we play some stuff? Obviously, yes. Would I like to play more? Absolutely. But, people go to see the Man-O-War stuff, and that's what we do. I don't get me wrong. I love playing, and it's really enjoyable for sure. But, we're pretty much bound to doing that part of it, so I mean, who knows? You never know. Maybe after a couple of shows we'll add more. I don't know. I mean, I'll play whatever.
Sure, yeah. No, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, yeah, I want to talk about the last record there, Born on Fire, which to me, I mean, that was one of my top 3 to 5 records in 2020. I mean, I just thought it was outstanding start to finish, and like we were saying, obviously a lot of the momentum was derailed from the pandemic. I know you guys had a big tour that you had scheduled in Europe at that point that got canceled. Obviously, I think there was another one that kind of got canceled a little bit after that.
4 different tours got postponed and canceled. It was crazy, man. That first one was with Burning Witches too, and that would have been that was going to be so good. Yeah, that whole thing derailed. Took the steam right out of everything. And I'm glad you love the album because we put a lot of work into it. God, I remember I was still working on it while we were touring Australia in the hotel rooms because I was, I wrote a lot and I arranged a lot and I produced a lot of stuff off that album myself. So I mean, I was in it. You know what I mean? Everybody's out partying. I'm over there, working on keyboard parts and sending files to America and back to Germany. It was insane. So when everything kind of it was very disheartening. You know what I mean? Because we put a lot of work into that record, so.
Oh, absolutely, man. Well, I was going to say, man, if you don't mind, I mean, walk us through, sort of that experience, in terms of, I mean, as a band, I mean, it's great to see you guys obviously, able to recover now and you're getting ready to finally hit the road and do something with the band. But I mean, what does that do for a band in terms of the band's sort of, I guess, psyche in a way? I mean, you're on this high, you've got this great album, you're getting ready to put out, and then boom, it just gets derailed like that. I mean, how different, I guess, was that experience compared to, some of the other, I guess, more conventional obstacles that bands go through, like band member change? It's just got to be sort of spirited, man. I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be right out honest, man. I mean, I've dealt with mental health issues my whole life, and that definitely did not do anybody any good. And it was kind of like, it was always like this anticipation of like, oh, it won't be long. We'll be back at it. We'll be back at it. And then, of course, they freaking milk the shit out of it. And then, it's like, well, what the fuck? You know what I mean? It's like, what am I ever going to play again? What, it's like, you just, oh, well, you can do, we did the interactive things, the Vakken thing, which was cool. And don't get me wrong, but it's not the same, and, everybody just was discouraged. It was like, why bother? You know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah,
well, what are
yeah.
we doing here? You know, it's like,
Mhm.
what the fuck are we doing here? We're never leaving. You know, we're never
Yeah.
getting out of here again. And
Uh,
you know, it definitely weighed heavy on everybody. You know, and I
mhm,
mean, it was. I mean, I tried to gather the troops. You know, I was like, we had like me and Michael Pond. We had put together like I think we had like 10 songs that we put together, and just Ross was just not into it,
mhm,
and it just kind of we just kind of threw it off to the wayside. You know what I mean?
mhm.
And then you know, at that point, it was just like, yeah, whatever. Call me when we're gonna play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It really what it came down to. You know. So.
Sure, yeah. No, absolutely, man. Well, while I have you here, obviously, Mark, I gotta, of course, mention that other little band that you've
Oh,
recently
that band.
joined. Yeah, a little band, they're
Man,
called
that
Metal
little band.
Church, I think,
Yep.
So you got your debut with them. It's coming out in May, Congregation of Annihilation. Obviously the first track's out there now that everyone can check out. Just briefly, I mean, take us through how you wound up getting that gig. I mean, how did that come about?
I've been friends with Stet, the drummer,
Hmm.
for years.
Okay.
He's from down the Cape,
Okay. Hmm.
Massachusetts, and so it was always local dudes, you know.
Hmm.
And I've known him for years, and then um, we always stayed in touch, and then we ended up we did some stuff. Rasta Boss and in Metal Church ended up on some festivals over the year when in 2019, and I got them their sound man because their sound man was Rasta Boss sound man. So
Hmm.
kind of got that whole thing together, small world family thing, and
Hmm.
I just that's how it kind of that whole thing came about. And then there was a point where there was a possibility that there was going to be some stuff that Mike wasn't going to be able to do, and they didn't want to cancel, and they were like, "Hey, would you be willing to do it?" And I was like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, of course." Obviously, who wouldn't? I mean, that never happened as far as that part goes. So there was kind of like there was always a little of that in the background.
Hmm.
Whatever, like if it was ever an emergency of needing a fill in or something.
Okay. Hmm.
Um, then when the whole Mike thing happened, I was like, whoa, especially where it was mental
Hmm.
health related, I really felt for it because been close to that stuff myself.
Hmm.
I thought for sure, I'm like, oh man, they're not going to continue on. I mean, how could you, that's a tough one. That's a tough pill to swallow,
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Mhm.
and then I got a call from Stet and Steve, the bass player, and they were like, "Well, what do you think?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I feel kind of weird about it at first, but I'm like,
Mhm.
sure. Well, let's see what happens." That's really what it
Mhm.
was. It was like, let's see
Okay.
what happens. And then I got and then finally I got we started, connecting with Kurt, and we built it from there. It was a long process. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It wasn't something that was like, all right, you're in.
Mhm. Sure.
It was
Mhm.
they were healing, and it's totally
Mm.
understandable. So I just, I was kept doing what I was doing. And we're like, and then it was like, all right, let's do a couple of songs and from the different eras. I'm like, okay, cool. And I did those, and then it was like, all right, well, here's some stuff that we had written already. Let's see what you can do with it. And then we started working on it from there, and then we just kept going and going, and then finally we're like, do you want to be in the band? I was like, well, yeah. you know and
Uh,
but we had to keep it on the DL for a long time, and that
okay.
was probably the hardest part because I'm very excited inside, but
Mhm.
it was just a process. It was better that way because there was no outside pressure, and
Sure. Mhm.
we dug in and we took as long as we needed to make it what we needed to do. I mean, they had already had all the material written for the next album with Mike, but that material didn't suit my style.
Your style, okay.
And I kept saying we should go heavy.
Mhm.
We should go
Uh,
back to the first original era of the band because David Wayne was more my guy as far as influences and
mhm.
stylistically wise. And that's what we ended up doing. And
Okay.
most of the record was tailored towards that. There's just some stuff that we reworked from the original stuff, and a couple of the bonus tracks are from that, which I had a good time with, because they were the bonus tracks are very different for me, but I love the music. And I was like, yeah, if they're going to be bonus tracks, and because it was like, me and Kurt were like, all right, the main body of this new record is itself. Like, there's 9 songs that encompass the title and the theme and the feel of the record. And you'll get that when you hear it all together. And then the bonus tracks, you could tell that they were fun to do, and they were something different than fits with the body of the record. That's how I felt about it. You know what I mean? But we were like, fuck it, let's just do it. This is cool. I mean, Metal Church is about doing different, different things going on anyway. So but the bulk of the main body of the record it's cohesive. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Fantastic. So now, Mark, you're in bands now with 2 legendary metal guitarists, with Kurt Van Hoof, obviously, and of course Ross Friedman. And I would think that being obviously in Ross's band, for some time now, is definitely that would itself is sort of like a pinch yourself sort of moment, thing. Just getting in with them. Now getting the Metal Church gig, I'm assuming that your adolescent dreams have probably been fulfilled now. I mean, working with these 2 guys, this is great. So, obviously, I'm sure when you first joined up with Ross, that was obviously a big jump from what you had done before that. But now you joined one of the biggest metal bands of all time. How much has been, I guess, with Ross and his band? I mean, how much has that now prepared you for the Metal Church gig, especially when you look at back at where you were from 5 or 6 years ago when you first started with Ross? How much has that prepared you for this? Yeah,
it's been. To be honest, if I didn't do this, I wouldn't. I don't think I would be prepared for such a jump, honestly. I mean, because you have to remember, it's interesting that this all happened really fast for me.
Yeah.
When you look at the scope of most people's music careers, it's very expansive, And I mean, even though I played for a lot of years, I used to party a lot, and I used to, drink. I was a wild man. I had a wicked reputation. I mean, I could sing, but I was out of my mind all the time. I was kind of like, doing the Motley Crue and all that shit without being a Motley Crue, And and that ain't no lie. But and hey, I have no regrets. I had a great time, but came to a point in my life where I was just like, I can't fucking keep doing this. And this is prior, and I was like, I'm not really doing any good for myself. I don't think any good decision ever came from being fucking hammered, So I quit, I'm gonna be 7 years now.
Oh,
and the wildest thing is, I remember, I was at a Hatebreed show, which is wild because I just did Jamie Jasta's show yesterday, which talk about how weird things happen. And I just remember because that was my day. And then no word of a lie, months, not even a year, like literally like 3 months later, here I am. Hey, you want to play with Ross? Yep. Okay, let's do it. And the way it happened was just so weird. I basically was like, fake it till you make it. I was just like, all right, well, it's trial by fire. Let's go. And, I learned a lot fast. You know what I mean? And so it was like kind of like condensing 15 years of something into like a year. And being so driven as I am, I just took it all in and just went for it and worked at it. Been working at it really hard. So even to this, obviously even more so now. And, but the whole experience with the Ross stuff was, it was pivotal. I would never be where I am now, have not for that. You know what I mean? So it was definitely, like I said, I wouldn't even consider it training because there is no training. Here's 80,000 people, go play. Oh,
yeah, okay. I know, right?
It's like either you do it or you don't do it. There's no in betweener on that,
Sure.
Glory, victory in the
Well, that's the interesting thing about your career is that, your career is peaking now at a point when most have already peaked, at your age. I mean, we usually see vocalists that, with talented vocalists like yourself, they get discovered pretty quickly early on in their career. Then they're able to continue in the business based off the earlier part of the career. But with you, it's the complete opposite. It's like you're firing all cylinders now. I mean, hitting everything as you're getting older. It's very different, obviously. I mean, was there? I mean, in your opinion, why did it take, I guess, so long for people to notice really how great of a singer you are? Was it because, like you said, because you were just more of a hard partier type and didn't really focus as much as you are now? Or what's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely had a big part to it. I'll be the first one to admit it, and I use that as a. I hate to be that person, but I'll just tell you that it's if you want to make it in the music business, even more so now, you really just gotta put your shit together. You know what I mean? And I think I just gave up on myself for a long time. You know what I mean? I was always out there doing all this stuff, and locally it was like, oh, whatever. Oh, you're great. I'm like, okay, whatever. I think it was a personal thing for me where I just didn't really wasn't confident in myself, or I just was dealing with too many things, and I just didn't know how to handle it, and I just made a lot of bad decisions, and I trudged myself through the dirt. I mean, it was funny because the funny thing is I've known so many people in the industry for so many years, and it's wild because I met all those people as a fan, right? And perfect example, some of the guys in Queensryche, some of the guys in the Shadows Fall. I mean, the Shadows Fall guys are my bros. And I met them just as a fan. We had a cover band together with them. And like all the guys in Steel Panther, I met them when they were in middle school, but I was a fan. Sure. So it was kind of weird. I met all these people as a fan, and you're kind of like, hey, I play, and like everybody else. Yeah, okay, you and everybody else plays. And I think the wildest thing for me was, especially, this is wild because I remember I'd known the Steel Panther guys for years. Always would go. I've seen them like 50 times. Always hanging out, and it was always like, "Oh, you play? That's cool." Oh, that I had a couple of original things. Oh, that sounds cool. It was one of those things. And I don't know if it was because I didn't pursue it, or I really don't know. I guess it doesn't matter now. But I remember I was playing Bang Your Head Festival in Germany. We were headlining one stage. Steel Panther was headlining another stage. Metal Church was playing on another stage. It was 3.
Oh, okay.
So hanging out with my guys in Metal Church, that was wild. And then I saw the Steel Panther guys, and they were like, what the fuck? Last time we saw you, you were just like hanging out in the audience, and here you are headlining here, and we're here. And that was kind of like a surreal experience just in itself, meaning like, fuck, man, I'm finally kind of getting this stuff together, but I think it came down to, I fucked around too much.
Okay. Yeah, well, better late than never, right? I mean, it's, well,
to be honest, for me personally, I'm glad it's at this point in my life, because for me, I've always been my parents always made fun of. They were always like, man, you've always been a late bloomer. And my parents have been more supportive than anybody. And we laugh about it now, and they're like, well, you finally caught up there, Mark. You finally caught up. You finally did something with this stuff after all these years, and I feel good about it, because I really am in tune with myself now. And I would never have been able to do any of this stuff had I not been at this point in my life. So it was just the way it was meant to be, I guess, and I'm grateful for it. I'm very grateful that people gave me the chance. Ross gave me the chance, and I'm forever grateful for him, because, word gets around, and people were telling me that guy's a fucking madman, and he was like, look, man, and, maybe, he definitely, maybe he was, but from what I know of him and what I've saw, I like to have, I want to give this a shot. So he gave me the chance. He was the one that opened the door for me. And I just took that opening and started running with it. And I grabbed the ball and said, you ain't getting it from me, and I just been keep running ever since,
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, man. It's a great story. It really is, man. And I, but I also want to get into now, of course, talking about your vocal style and approach. Because one of the main reasons why I love Born of Fire is not only just the music, obviously the riffs from Ross, and obviously he's a legendary riff master there, but your vocals really stand out big time for me. And the reason it does, just a couple of reasons. One, in general, I mean, your vocal range and your tonalities on the record, I mean, they're phenomenal. I find that most power and speed metal, vocalists, it's pretty sort of predictable as what most of them are going to do a lot of times, like during the song. But with you, I mean, it's completely the opposite with you. I mean, you never know where you're going from 1 minute to the next, which I love. I love vocal styles that aren't sort of formulaic and predictable. And the other thing is that, unlike most of the same kind of vocalists in general, metal vocalists really in general, you don't overdo those falsetto parts, And to me, I think most singers, especially in the genre of metal, they just, they love to show everyone, hey, I can hit these high notes, I can do it. And sometimes I just think they throw them in there. They look for ways to just get them in there, where I think with your approach, it seems to be like you only put them in there sort of when it's called for or appropriate, or really just to emphasize maybe a particular lyrical part of the song. So, I mean, I guess talk a little bit about your approach, especially on the Ross to Boss records, and really, how do you really, I guess, when do you decide really to sort of go high and falsetto, considering, like I said, you do it really, in my opinion, more methodically than what I hear from most metal vocalists.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad you noticed that. I just write for the song, and funny when it's weird. It depends on the song. You know what I mean? If it's I'll be honest. Sometimes there's definitely a couple points. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, it'd be really cool just to throw some crazy high here because it would sound wild. You know what I mean? Maybe just for the shits and giggles of playing like, I'm gonna hit a freaking, hit a F4 here, woo, whatever, F5 or whatever, and you can go for it. But but that's why it's not so dominant. I just trying to go for different. I do it like if the song's like a movie in my head.
Okay.
There's the ebb and flow of things, and I just go how I feel the song needs to be interpreted. You know what I mean? That's really all I can say. I mean, for me, it's just a natural process. And I don't really, I definitely sometimes, it's interesting because some of the songs you could write in 2 seconds if you wanted to be generic. But I've always been a student of, well, what can I put here that no one would expect? How can I make this interesting and different? What can we do here? And I try to approach my stuff like that. What can we do? I should try different things with this part, and I did that a lot on the Metal Church record because obviously it's Metal Church. So there was a certain vibe, but we, it was like, all right, well, I could go like this, but I'm like, maybe we won't do that. Let's try this. And like Kurt was like, oh yeah, that's really cool. We weren't expecting to do that, and there's a couple of songs where I don't sing any high stuff. And it's just, because that's what the song required. Why do we need to stick anything high in there if it doesn't need it? Or maybe it's an effect in the background. That was a big thing because I like layers. I like dynamics, and the dynamic of the tune, it really is what makes it. I mean, I always look at it like this. There's so many people out there that are great singers, better than me. They know how they can hit the notes, they can do this. But if the song and the feel and the dynamic of it isn't interesting or isn't, real to the tune, then it just kind of comes across as generic,
Sure.
And, I like so many different vocal styles that I can't help but want to just do them. That's what I like to do. I love super heavy. Super heavy. I'm like, I got to do a whole tune. Just I still haven't done it. On my own band, probably I'm going to do that on this record because it's something I've always wanted to do. I was just like, I just want to do it, but I'm going to do it my way, because that's all I know how to do. So it's just a natural thing for me. I like so many things, and I like to experiment with things and try to do things that aren't, they're going to go there. Nah. I don't want to go there. Let's go somewhere else. It's because it's, you know, let's throw it for a loop, make it interesting for the people that are listening to it, you know, because you say, you know, you go like, oh, all right, and it's a power metal song. I know what I'm going to get, and it's going to be this, and it's going to be that. And I'm like, you know,
yeah, totally.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And I mean, and I love all that stuff, but it gets to a point where certain genres of music are just so fucking predictable now. And I'm like, okay, that's all right. Well, wow, cool. There's a 40-piece orchestra there. Okay, cool. You know, it's just I don't really, if I'm going to create something, I really want to stretch my wings as much as I possibly can with the art, because it's art. You know what I mean? At least to me, it is, you know. You know, some people are out there just cookie cutting records, and that's cool. I mean, hey, I don't, you know, that's fine, and they're great. But for me, I have to feel everything that I'm doing. I have to really be into what I'm doing, or it just doesn't. It's a waste of time for me, you know.
Sure. No, absolutely.
Maybe that's why it took so long too.
Well, and I want to talk about, you know, one of your other bands, Let Us Pray, you know, because to me, that's a whole different approach in itself. You know, in fact, I mean, like you said, that's more extreme, obviously. That's like real heavy stuff. And I actually think that's probably your like strongest work as a vocalist, because I mean, you're all over the place in that. It's like, well, I mean, it's awesome, man. I mean, obviously, like you said, it's more extreme, obviously, than Ross the Boss and Metal Church, but the approach too is completely different, at least from what I hear. I mean, obviously,
absolutely,
like you say, much more harsher tones, but even the melodic parts on those songs that you do, I mean, way different to me than the melody that you do with Ross. You know, I mean, you've got like 10 or so different sort of, you know, things you go in and out of, man. It's really impressive, man. It really is. It's so unique. You know, I mean, so do you have specific styles of voices that you exclusively will use on a particular band, or is it really just go per song, even with the different band?
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. I'm glad that you noticed that, because I had this conversation like last week. It was interesting because, like, you know, Let Us Praise my baby. You know, me and my writing partner John, we've been doing it for a long time, and he is like an extreme artist. He's just, to me, he's a genius. You know what I mean? And like, he's I hope in the future people will dig into what he's about, because I call him the quantum computer of writing, because he writes in layers, and it's the fucking wildest shit. He writes like an orchestra, but with metal. It's the wildest thing. And we do, I mean, you think that the first record, the new record's going to even blow people's minds even more. I mean, we're delving into categories that I didn't even think we were going to go into. And I'm like, we laugh. And we're like, dude, no one's going to know what the fuck we're doing. This is great. You know, and we pride ourselves in just going, all right, well, we're going to go here, and then we're going to go totally that way. And then we're going to come back over here. And there's no boundaries. That's what makes that different. It's like, if I feel like singing, like, you know, like, oh, I'm going to do it. I don't care. There's no boundaries. No one's telling me I can't do it. And that's what makes that different. Ross the Boss, it's, you know, it's within a realm of things. You get the Man of War thing going in the classic, you know, more power metal thing. But I definitely try to stick more of some of my aggressive tones in there, because I feel like it needs it. It's aggressive. I've always feel that way, you know, but, you know, still keeping some of the melodic elements to it and that part. And with the Metal Church thing, that was a whole different beast, because I was like, you know, like I said, very heavily influenced by David Wayne. And I love David Wayne, and I always like the David Wayne, Eric Adams thing, I call it, because if you listen to a lot of the early stuff, there's really just this chaotic berserker vibe. You know, it's hostile. There's like really kind of it's controlled, but controlled chaos, I call it. And, you know, and I always liked that. Was like, we're going to war, and it was this aggressive tone going on, but it's still, you could understand it. It was very different for the time. And I think it went over a lot of people's heads. You know, when you think of heavy now, you think of all these well, I'm going to go sing death metal today, and that's great. I love it. But that was a different type of thing. There was really no training to that. It was just something they did,
Okay.
And that was a whole different beast, and that's what I wanted to tap into with the metal church thing, because that was the thing I loved about the metal church stuff, was that early David Wayne stuff. And me and Kurt must have had so many conversations about that. And that was what I really attuned myself to. So my mentality and my writing I was engulfed in that for a while when we were writing and recording that record. So that sounds totally different than the other two things. And it's just because that's the realm of the mindset and the vibe I was feeling within that. I just adapt to the environment that I'm in. I mean, that's probably the best way to put it, adapting into the environment that I'm in, and I'm very grateful that I'm able to do these things. And I just do them because that's how it feels for me naturally. It's organic for me. I'm not trying to imitate or become something I'm not. It's something that I just happens naturally for me while I'm encompassing myself within the material that I'm working with.
Okay. Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a long explanation.
No, it's good. Yeah, it's good. I like long explanations. Details, always good. Always good. So, I mean, now, Mark, just last question here. I mean, obviously now, you've got, you got the Ross Boss tour coming up in Europe at the end of the month here. You've obviously got the Metal Church album coming out at the end of May. You've got obviously there's a bunch of dates that are already lined up for that as well. As you just kind of mentioned to us, Let Us Praise, working on a new record. I mean, how are you going to juggle all this, man? I mean, there's a lot going on for you, which is, it's a good thing, obviously, but is it, I guess with all this stuff, is this sort of like a new challenge now for you to sort of have to juggle and figure out what you're going to do and when you're going to do it and all that?
Yeah, it's definitely becoming quite a challenge. And, I was laughing, I'm looking at the schedule, one of the month schedules. I literally go from playing with Ross for 3.5 weeks. I get like a week off. I go rehearse with Metal Church for a week. I do 3 shows with Metal Church. Then I have to leave the next day, go to Spain, play with Ross the Boss, come back home. Then I have to go I have to go back to England, go play with Ross the Boss, come back, rehearse with Metal Church for a week. I haven't done it yet. I'm like, I'm going to have an identity crisis for sure. But so, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. That's what happens. What's a good problem to have? Obviously, it's not like it's a bad day,
exactly. And then it's like, oh, well, don't forget, you still have to record this Let Us Pray record. And I'm like, I'll do that in between. Now I do it myself. So, there's no one pressuring me, but I pressure myself. And it's like, okay, well, that whole week you have to, you got to get a song done. I'm like, yeah, I know. I got to get a song done. Yep. You know what I mean? But it's just kind of just staying in, put it this way. It's a great feeling to be only worried about playing music.
That's a good way to put it.
And for the first time, because I have other businesses that obviously keep my livelihood going. And, for years and years, it's always been bouncing back and forth. For the first time, I'm able to just be able to focus on playing music mostly, and like I said, that's not a bad problem to have, if that's my problem, then I'm cool. You know what I mean? I'm good with that,
Absolutely. Well, for everyone out there, of course, April 28th is the day. Be sure to pick up a copy of Legacy of Blood, Fire, and Steel, Ross the Boss, out on AFM Records. And to the European listeners, be sure to check out the band live, Kings of Metal 35th Anniversary Tour, starting April 28th in Germany. And Mark, where should we send the viewers and listeners to keep up with Ross the Boss, Metal Church, just all your stuff? Let the listeners know where they can keep up.
Yeah, the official Ross the Boss Facebook is good for the Ross the Boss stuff. The Metal Church stuff, all of everything from Twitter to they keep really good stuff up on that. And then my personal thing on Instagram's where I like to roam because I like pictures. Okay. So and I like to watch my dog videos. I love those I love the animals, so it keeps me sane from the rest of the craziness of the internet. So that's the best way. And then it always goes to Facebook anyway. So yeah, I just, you know, if you want to catch up with stuff that I'm doing, I'm always on the Instagram. I love that. I love it there.
That's awesome, man. All right, again, Legacy of Blood, Fire and Steel, April 28th. And Marc, thanks for coming so much for coming on Aftershocks, man. I really appreciate it, and good luck with everything. And I can't wait to see you on the road, man.
Thank you.
Absolutely.